Regulation H is coming to a close, with Toronto Regionals marking the final major tournament of the format, and most players would agree that one particular Pokemon has been the face of this regulation, Sneasler, which everyone has been very happy about. Despite not seeing too much usage in the first few Regulation H tournaments, Sneasler was on 37% of teams across the entire format, with even higher usage on successful teams. It won 5 of the last 8 regional or international level championships, with half of all top 8 teams from those tournaments having a Sneasler. It took a while to discover Sneasler's potential in Regulation H, but now that people have seen how strong it is, it's sure to make waves in the upcoming Regulation G, right? Well, no. Fortunately for the many Direclaw haters out there, I don't think Sneasler will see any real success in Reg G, but why is that? Before we answer that question, let's first have a look at what made Sneasler such a force in Reg H. The first and most obvious thing to look at is its speed. With a 120 base speed stat, this annoying weasel is faster than pretty much everything in the metagame, with a few exceptions that you're not likely to run into more than once or twice in a tournament run. This can be further boosted by its Unburden ability, which doubles its speed when it consumes or loses its held item. Commonly run with a Psychic Seed next to Indeedee, Unburden Sneasler is fast enough to outrun most of the metagame, even with an opposing Tailwind up. Okay, it's fast, so what? Electrode's fast, that thing sucks. The reason Sneasler's speed is such a threat is because of the many offensive attributes that it has. It has a powerful 130 base attack stat, which is in the same ballpark as common physical attackers like Rillaboom, Dragonite, and Garchomp. This attack stat is backed up by a deadly offensive typing, with Ghost and Poison being the only individual types able to resist both fighting and poison. Being faster than everything on the field means that it gets more chances to fire off these powerful attacks. We should also address the elephant in the room, Direclaw. Maybe the most hated move since 2016 Dark Void. This one move has the capacity to flip games instantly, and Sneasler being so fast means that it gets more chances to roll the dice and shift the odds in its own favour. This allows it to go fishing for status effects in the early game while still doing very solid damage, and I've seen many endgames be decided by Sneasler being faster than an opponent and getting a lucky sleep or paralysis that ends up winning the game from an otherwise losing position. So why Sneasler specifically? There are plenty of Pokemon that are fast and powerful, but none of them are seeing the same success. The reason is to do with the Pokemon around it. Sneasler's access to Unburden makes it excellent into the rise of hyper-offensive teams that use Tailwind or Pokemon like Swiftswim Basculegion that would otherwise outspeed and KO other Glass Cannons. Between its 2 stab types and its dark coverage and Throat Chop, it threatens super effective damage on a huge portion of the metagame, such as Rillaboom, Incineroar, and the omnipresent Steel types. Even a lot of common Terra types like Fairy, Steel, and Ghost are hit super effectively by Sneasler's trio of attacks. The final piece of the puzzle is that most of the traits we've talked about are unique to Sneasler. It has no real competition as an offensive poison type, and although there are a few other fighting types in the meta like Annihilate and Kommo-o, they fill much more specific roles and lack the same immediate threat that Sneasler poses, meaning that they're much harder to just slot into a team. There are other Pokemon that have the Unburden ability, including other fighting types in Hawlucha and Hitmonlee, but they all lack Sneasler's natural speed and damage output. Sneasler's role is incredibly powerful in Regulation H, and Sneasler is the only one that can do it. So why doesn't this translate to Regulation G? The most obvious answer is that it's surrounded by much stronger Pokemon with much higher stats. Whereas its powerful close combat may have been able to get a 2-hit KO on the bulkier Pokemon in Regulation H, you don't have that luxury against insanely optimized stat blocks like Iron Hands, Raging Bolt, or Calyrex Ice. It doesn't help that a lot of these blocks of stats can return a 1-hit KO on Sneasler because of its poor defenses, which wasn't as much of an issue in Regulation H where things weren't hitting back as hard. The surrounding Pokemon aren't just bulkier and stronger in general, they're also faster, which as we talked about earlier was Sneasler's most important attribute in Regulation H. While there were very few things that outsped it in Regulation H, Regulation G is full of powerful threats that are faster than Sneasler. You've got a 4-way speed tie between Miraidon, Koraidon, Fluttermane, and Chien-Pao, great game design by the way. Then Zacian is faster than those 4, Calyrex Shadow even faster still, and then you've got common Choice Scarf users like Urshifu or Chi-Yu. Because of its frailty, most of these Pokemon are able to take down Sneasler in a single hit, unless you run your valuable Focus Sash on it, or in the case of Rapid Strike Urshifu, they'll KO anyway despite the Sash. Okay, no problem, you can run Unburden and outspeed all these Pokemon anyway. Unfortunately, you're probably still not getting KOs on the faster stuff, and now your matchup into the stat blocks we mentioned earlier is even worse without Sash. Besides, which terrain setter do you set up Unburden with? Indeed, your Rillaboom next to Sneasler is a board position that gets eaten alive by Calyrex Ice, and Miraidon is kind of in the same boat, but with the added bonus that its electric terrain shuts down Sleep, the most powerful Direclaw effect. On top of the general power level being higher, the specific powerful Pokemon that sit atop the metagame are particularly bad for our poor Weasel. The four most popular restricted Pokemon in the game are Calyrex Ice, which isn't threatened by Sneasler and can KO it in one hit with a Glacial Lance or high horsepower, Calyrex Shadow, which is faster than Sneasler and runs 4 times super effective psychic moves, Miraidon, which is also faster than Sneasler and is the Hydrogen Bomb to Sneasler's coughing baby, and finally Zamazenta, which... wait. Zamazenta doesn't tend to run very much speed, so Sneasler will be faster, and Zamazenta's a steel type, so it's taking super effective damage from close combat. Its main attack move is Body Press, which Sneasler resists. Sneasler actually does beat one of the big Ah. Huh, I was expecting that to do a bit more damage, but like... oh. Oh no. Hold on. Okay, so let me just... yep, and then I plug that in there, and... yeah, so I've run the calculations, and a standard Zamazenta set takes less than half from Sneasler, and then KOs with Heavy Slam after the defense drop. Sneasler does not beat Zamazenta. Okay, so Sneasler isn't fast enough, bulky enough, or powerful enough to make an impact in a metagame full of unfavourable matchups. But that's not all for our mediocre Mustelid. The true final nail in this Sneasler-shaped coffin is the fact that it now has much fiercer competition for its role of an immediately powerful fighting type that you can put on basically any team. Why would you run Sneasler when you could instead run a fighting type that hits just as hard, has a move that's guaranteed to crit so it can ignore the most common counterplay to physical attackers in Intimidate, and it can hit through Protect with all of its moves, completely invalidating the most important mechanic for defensive and positional play in VGC that has been at the core of the game since VGC began back in 2000. It's Urshifu. Sneasler is dead, and Urshifu killed it. On top of all the points we went over before, there's really no reason to run Sneasler when Urshifu exists. Urshifu is stronger in just about every single conceivable way, and it's not worth trading that for a few extra points in speed when Sneasler isn't even that fast in Regulation G anyway. The long and short of it is that Sneasler sucks now. Sometimes Pokemon will drop in usage between formats, but Sneasler's going to see a fall from grace like nothing we have ever seen, going from number 1 to never seeing any real use pretty much overnight. All the factors that made it so dominant in Regulation H don't apply in Regulation G, and it simply can't keep up with a much more powerful metagame where it's completely outclassed by one of the best Pokemon in the format. And that's going to be it for this video. This is my first attempt at scripted and edited content, and I did all of the scripting and editing myself, so if you enjoyed, please do leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments what you think I did well and what you think I could improve on for next time, because I plan on making a lot more content like this in future, and I would love your feedback so I can improve every single time I do it. If you want to keep up with my live content, go follow me on Twitch, where I do primarily VGC content, but I also do stuff like challenge runs. The link to that is in the description. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.